Hi again. We just had an interesting panel discussion with four panelists and Dr. Olli-Pekka. And now, as we come to the end of the second day, we would like to close the session, the 2-day seminar, with a closing session. The final session will be wrapped up by Professor Mary Helston from Stockholm University and from Professor Anna-Maja Poikis, who's the Dean of Faculty of Education and Psychology at JYU. This session will be chaired by Dr. Said Juma from the State University of Zanzibar, Tanzania. Dr. Said Juma, the time is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hoda. Dear participants, we are coming to the end of our second day of this SDG4 seminar. So in this closing session, as it has just been introduced, we have two speakers. We have Professor Mary Helston from Stockholm University and Professor Anna-Maja Poikis from University of Jyväskylä. So first of all, I would like to welcome Professor Mary Helston from Stockholm University, please.
Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me well. Thank you for the invitation and to participate. This event has been going, I understand, for a good 10 years or so. And I'm very, very pleased that Stockholm University and our collaboration with Jyväskylä University and our equivalent master programs and research in global education with a focus on SDGs has been ongoing for about 5. We're going into the 6th year now. And so on behalf of Stockholm University and the International and Comparative Education stream at the university, I would like to thank you very much for these 5 years. I've been asked to give some reflective comments of these, perhaps these 5 years, and also of the program today. I'm not going to be talking for a very long time, but I have some reflections that I think are noteworthy to leave us with. And in these COVID-19 times and pandemic times, I'm also aware of where I am located at the moment. I'm not located at Stockholm University. Our audience might not be so surprised. It is nighttime. It is now 11:10 at night, and I am in South Australia, sitting in quarantine in a hotel room. And as you know, these are the times of quarantines. I am here on research sabbatical. I have just entered, and I have some time of quarantine to clear before I'm let out into the public, as it should be. So I want to frame or provide us some framing of the program and of the series of SDG conferences that we have been so fortunate in taking part in. I would like to frame it in terms of richness and excellent, and something that I think really provides a hue on the program overall and the conferences overall is the deep engagement with which the delivery of the program, the issues and the topics and the themes invite their listeners and audiences to engage deeply with each other in dialogue, whether we are face-to-face as we have been in previous years. And this year also, actually, we have succeeded, or Jyväskylä University has succeeded in providing deep engagement in an online environment. So, as I said, our first year, myself, my colleagues, and also our students from our master program, it was the first year of 2015. So I'm now going to give us some momentum in looking back a little bit over the years. So over and above the sheer education and development issues with which this conference has engaged itself around the GEM reports that have been launched at these events, the overall program has always been one which has touched on the issues and touched them on the pulse, I would say. So the ways in which Jyväskylä University has arranged the integration of our competent student involvement by giving them freedom to run the program and engage and be active in the program, it has helped to raise the bar in terms of the quality of delivery. And this is something that I have taken with me across the Baltic Sea to Stockholm in my reflections of the delivery. So this has also allowed for a longer discussion and long discussions that have enabled connecting at both the personal and professional levels around stories that we have carried with us into the work that we do outside of this particular context within which we meet and have met these 2 days. So it is something that has lingered on into our daily lives, into our engagement with our studies or with our work, with our lecturing, and perhaps also in our research, in our collaboration with the surrounding community. So the program has invariably, over the years, been broad. It has been international, and it has had some impressive and eminent speakers each year, both from within and outside of the university sector. And I'm not going to go through all the names here, but we all know who they are through having a look at the program. So in many ways, the organization and delivery of these seminar days have left an inclusive imprint on the community that gathers here each year. And so just some comments then from this particular year. Now, we're moving from an understanding of inclusion to a decade of action of inclusive practices, as Bilal reminded us of in the launch of the German report. And the focus then on the report is on the harnessing of strengths rather than a focus on particular problems. And here, the building of motivation and inspiration is needed, perhaps by making visible some of the practices of the past and the present and into the future. So the shift then is toward learning as a form of peer work, where partners and partnerships are formed and where we can learn from each other. And this for the well-being of all, for the well-being of everyone. And of course, in these uncertain pandemic times, we live in times of the new normal of the current pandemic and the new normal following it. We talk about the new lifestyles of sustainable worlds or a sustainable future. And the GEM report talked about the new global public good of education, responsibility and equity. And I find that particularly noteworthy, the new global public good. And I see that development in the education sector as leading us into a future that requires us to focus on more work in this area. So we're acknowledging inclusion as a central tenet in the move forward in a precarious world, as Bilal Barakat wisely reminded us of. So our keynotes by Hanna Postiahokas and Sai Väyrynen also push the close scrutiny of looking at our own responsibilities in building inclusive practices across educational boundaries. And I would like to add to that and ask, well, is good teaching for all? What is good teaching for all? And this seminar has made us aware and perhaps reminded us of maintaining the good quality in teaching and learning for all. And that is indeed what inclusive education has as at its core, I believe. So it calls us in looking at shifting learning to something that transforms capacities for inclusion in education. And this particular transformation merges, if you like, the fragmentations of understanding inclusive education. We talked about the diversity and talked about the differences of meaning and the applicability of the terms and all the facets that it involves in putting it into action. So it combines both the affective and the social and the intellectual access also to knowledge and learning communities. And this, I believe, is a task that is well-timed and manageable within the efforts of our immediate educational community. And of course, then thinking about the future and in closing, in a closing address such as this one, the human engagement around these tasks perhaps works better when we can meet face to face, or perhaps it works better when we can engage over digital mode. This is something for us to find out and to explore further, I think, in the future. And so within these words, and with these words, I thank again for the Engage in Online program this year and the organizers and Jyväskylä University for inviting Stockholm University along. And we, of course, hope to be here again next year. So I just want to close by wishing you all good health in these times. And I will hand over now to the next speaker. Thanks.
Thank you. I guess I can continue. Dear audience, it's a great pleasure and a privilege to talk to you at this closing. And like Mary, I really appreciate our long-term collaboration. It's been a long time we've been doing these seminars, and I think that this gives us the perspective that this work is definitely needed, and having this opportunity to work with Stockholm and many other collaborators, I think it's very valuable. So I'm counted here as a representative of the Organizing Institute, but really my role is really minuscule compared to the excellent organizing team. Their insights and creative planning and commitment and hard work have again this year produced a seminar that is larger than its size. The seminar brings us together and provides a space and time to engage in dialogue on topics which are of critical global relevance. So year after year, I get excited and invigorated by the talks and the activities and the lively discussions, normally in the physical sort of arena, but this time arranged online via chats. And the atmosphere is every time optimistic, forward-looking, and committed. The topics of this year are part of ensuring good quality education, but especially working towards inclusion in education globally and locally. And these topics do not go away on other times of the year, nor do they become resolved at once. But all progress that is being made, all the little steps and the big ones, are to be congratulated. And the Global Monitoring Report reminds us of that this is sort of sustainable, very long-term process. The steps may include increased awareness. They may have data that is available for the first time. There's reporting to the general public and stakeholders and decision makers. But like Mary was referring to, that we need action and we need practices. So these very concrete changes in practices and resource allocation at the local level are needed. And that's where we come into play, all of us. There are tons of material available for use and for all of us to read, but they become concrete only when we take the initiatives to action and apply them in our local context. So the topic of this year, inclusion in education, is right in the core of SDG4. And I make some point using a few slides, and now I'll try to open them and see how it goes. And share. maybe Pano or somebody else will tell me that they are visible.
They're fine.
Okay, good. Right. So my first point is about the access. When you go to see the sort of the progress that has been made, there are sort of graphs that look very good, but they look good only for the high income populations or students. So we know that there is a lot of progress to be made. And I think that we have talked during these 2 days that there are different factors that come into play, and access to schools is something that needs also economics and resource allocation, but it's also about culture, and eventually or ultimately it's about having teachers, qualified teachers. So school is made of personnel, and we have to have also the teachers who have the resources to do this quality education. One of the indicators that already was talked about this today in the panel is sort of gender inclusion, and it seems that there really has been made some good progress, that girls are more often allowed to go into schools. There are very good signs about girls being able to complete their studies in secondary school and have an opportunity to go to the work life with their graduates. So this is something that's really a big step forward. But what about learning? It seems that one indicator that also Hanna was talking about in the panel, reading proficiency, is quite problematic in the sense that there is high proficiency in some countries, and then there are very low percentages of those children and youth who do get a good enough level in the secondary education. This is something that we all have to work with, and having being from a country where this proficiency is quite high, I think that means that we have to be responsible for making progress globally, and to sort of provide that support that is available to us to all those countries and cultures where there is still a lot of steps to be made. About the talks yesterday, there were really interesting sort of comments about teachers' role in inclusive education. Sai Väyrynen made, I think, very sort of insightful comments about like where it starts from the core values. Today we talked about attitudes. I think that they are pretty much the same thing. That how you feel about, whether you feel strongly that yes, inclusion is a basic right, you have to sort of make sure that in your thinking that's something that you strive for. But it's also about professional learning, and also these kind of other dispositions, feeling that you have high expectations for all of your students. You organize your learning in ways that all students can engage in the learning process. You use these kind of innovations that we talked in the panel. The last few sort of tasks was to sort of name good innovations, and I think teachers do those every day. They have to, especially when they are sort of thinking like, how do I engage the whole classroom? What are the ways that I can include everybody, regardless of ability level or any sort of ways of engaging? And learner-centered activities was what Sai sort of named as one way of putting that, to sort of looking for everybody's needs and trying to find ways to accommodate for them. Managing heterogeneous groups, I think that goes into teacher training. We have to provide skills in that area. It's not an easy area, but those competencies is one of our targets. And then Sai showed this cycle of positive professional development, which sort of shows the idea of that we all have to sort of learn these skills, and it starts from sort of trying them. But if you get discouraged, you oftentimes sort of like say that, no, I can't do that, it's too hard. But that's where we need this collaborative cycle, where there are other people in your community, in your work group, in your team that work with you and have the same kind of values, and share the sort of principles that are necessary. So it's about self-efficacy, having this kind of feedback that yes, we are on the right track, and you try approaches together, because they might feel difficult first, and then you have to sort of reiterate and sort of try new ways. So the experiences of success are important, but also this kind of reinforcing of this belief that also the leadership in the schools or daycares or those institutions are sort of backing you. And so I was saying that inclusion is basically about process of removing barriers for learning, but there might be also barriers in teachers' work that need to be looked at. And I think some panelists sort of talked about that we need to look at the good practices and see where we can share them and then scale them. Hannah was sort of giving another look to the same topic of the teacher's role. And I think that what she especially brought up was the preparedness to teach all students. So as a competence that you need to learn, but you also need the support from the community. Optimally, it's a whole school approach. Optimally, you need the leadership that shares the same values, and the development of this kind of practice where you consciously sort of look at the practices like, okay, we tried this this year in our school. We are going to try to work on these perhaps challenges and try to find new ways, and then we'll reflect on them and revise them. It was interesting in the panel today that the attitudes became the number one, but as I think Hannah was saying that, and others, that culture and resources are also very relevant, and resources mean oftentimes our competencies and how we see each other as strengths and we sort of work together. It's also time for shared learning. And the culture can mean a lot of things. It can mean like a work culture, like a climate where you feel that you are supported. Then I've tried to see whether there are any sort of tools for teacher education. Like I'm representing a department where we do train teachers. And there are sort of ways that we can sort of build this kind of professional sort of beliefs and skills as well. And I was sort of interested about this kind of a sort of a toolbox where you have to think about these things very concretely when you teach them, or when you sort of help the becoming teachers to become aware. For instance, like knowing every child, what does it really mean? What does it mean that you have high expectations for each child and you are committed to sort of bringing them to a higher level, their skills and their sort of aspirations? What kind of assessments you might want to use when you are sort of working in an inclusive practice? You might not only rely on tests, you would like to sort of see the child's progress in a very sort of like proximal level. And being flexible in your routines, making it safe to fail, to not sort of have this standard that you would have to have a right answer. And also, I think what was most interesting, view the culture as a resource, value and affirm all forms of difference. That was something that I felt that these are something that we should keep in mind in our training as some goals and practices. And then I sort of, I'm ending with a note on sort of dialogue, sometimes inclusion as a concept might sort of represent a difficult construct. What do we mean by that? Are there some political interests, or we would have to sort of navigate through that obstacle and barrier and find a way to sort of have this shared understanding that we have the same goal. And what I wanted to sort of just briefly point out from the panelists, I think that it was important that many said that economics cannot be ignored, that it's important to sort of pool resources and work together, and to fund research, because we need research on this topic. So many panelists talked about, like, we need data based on which we can make recommendations and take them to the stakeholders. To conclude, I'd like to thank all the participants. Your active participation and input makes this event valuable, special. It's not just any seminar. It's a learning experience that nourishes and empowers everybody involved. I warmly thank our esteemed keynote speakers, panelists, visiting experts, Mary and Elizabeth, and all of you that contributed to the thematic sessions by participating, planning, presenting. You are bridging countries and cultures and providing opportunities for dialogue. And my heartfelt thanks go to the amazing team consisting of our fantastic international master's program students from Eduman Deiko. You are doing a great job here. And of course, Salla, Panu, Ratih, Apurva, all the team and all the chairs, Said, Markku, Olli-Pekka, and I apologize, I'm surely forgetting somebody. So I thank you all. Have a safe end of the year. Keep on working on these important topics, and see you next year.
Thank you very much, Meri Hellsten and Anna-Maja Poikkeus, for your comments and conclusions. Now, when the closing session ends, it is the ending for our SDG4 seminar of the University of Jyväskylä. And as Anna-Maja mentioned already, also thank you for your contribution, all presenters, moderators, our student interns, Linnea and Apurva, student volunteers, and all your participants who have followed this seminar until today. HowSpace and its content is available for 13 days, and after that some materials are transferred to the SDG4 JYU webpage. So please follow our website for further information. There is also a feedback form available on the front page in HowSpace. We would appreciate if you could fill in the feedback form so that we can develop the SDG seminar for the future. Thank you already very much in advance. So, on behalf of the organizing team, I would like to express our gratitude for our cooperation. We are sorry for some of the technical challenges we faced during the seminar. We wish to continue our network and hope we will meet next time in other occasions or at our SDG4 seminar next year. Thank you very much and have a good weekend, everybody, and goodbye.